51 years ago, a young girl in the town of Waco, Texas, vanished on her way home after an evening shift, leaving behind her yellow Chevrolet Nova parked askew near the Bosque Bridge and an unopened can of Coca-Cola. Authorities at the time believed she left voluntarily, with no signs of foul play, and the case quickly faded into obscurity. Her family waited desperately, while her mother, a woman carrying an unrelenting pain, remained convinced her daughter never left that place. Then, nearly half a century later, when an investigator reopened the dusty case file, he discovered a small detail in a Polaroid photo that police had overlooked years before. A detail significant enough to change the entire case. Before we dive into this haunting story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cases solved after decades, don't forget to hit subscribe to stay updated on more stories. Waco, Texas. August 1974, the night air thick with heat and humidity, winds from the Bosque River carrying the scent of mud and damp wild grass. On a small street leading out of downtown, scattered yellow streetlights illuminated long-closed shops. Anna Caldwell, 19 years old, finished her last shift of the day at Bright Stitch Tailor Shop, carefully folding her uniform into a cloth bag and saying goodbye to the manager. She walked to the parking lot, where her pale yellow Chevrolet Nova sat under a dim streetlight. The engine softly rumbled, then the car rolled toward the suburbs. A worker at the Gulf station recalled seeing her stop there, buying a cold Coca-Cola, smiling as she mentioned heading home for dinner with her mother. The Nova drove off, its taillights fading into the darkness, stretching along Highway 84. After that, no one saw Anna again. When the clock in the Caldwell home neared midnight, the small kitchen remained lit, the dinner on the table gone cold. Ruth Caldwell stared at the wall clock, its second hand frozen at 11:47, and realized her daughter hadn't come home. She stepped onto the porch, calling her daughter's name into the darkness, hearing only the hum of cicadas under the trees. Unease flooded the silent house. By morning, Anna's bed remained untouched, her shoes still neatly placed under the dresser. Ruth picked up the phone and dialed the Bell County Sheriff, her voice hoarse between uneven breaths. "My daughter didn't come home last night. I'm afraid something's happened." On the other end, the night shift officer heard her ragged breathing, then the stifled sobs caught in her throat. That call was logged at 5:12 a.m., marking the start of a disappearance that Waco would talk about for nearly half a century. As dawn barely broke through the gray mist, Sheriff Wallace Ford left his bed, coffee still hot as he drove to the Caldwell home. The small house at the end of a dirt road sat silently amid a cracked, dry garden, its front door slightly ajar. Ruth Caldwell sat in the living room, a photo of her daughter before her. She no longer cried, only looked up as Ford entered, her voice rough. "She never left without telling me." Ford nodded, his weary eyes, seasoned by years on the job, betraying a trace of sympathy. He asked detailed questions about Anna's routine, her car, her clothes, then borrowed her graduation photo. A young girl with wavy brown hair, smiling, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Ford tucked the photo into an envelope, promising to do everything possible. By sunrise, Ford was back at the station. He assembled a rapid response team of 5 officers, 2 firefighters, and a few town volunteers. A map sprawled across his desk, red pins marking key locations. The Gulf Station, Waco Baptist Church, Highway 84, and the Bosque Bridge. "Start the search routes at dawn, cover every mile," Ford instructed. His voice was low and steady, but everyone sensed the tension beneath his calm demeanor. The first team left the station at 7:15 a.m. Sirens echoed through the humid, heavy air. Along Highway 84, cracked fields stretched endlessly, the smell of earth and scorched grass seeping into the patrol cars. Ford drove the department's old Plymouth with Sergeant Wayne Porter, stopping at roadside stores to ask questions. A convenience store clerk confirmed no one matching Anna's description had been seen, but a night shift worker at the Gulf Station remembered clearly. A brown-haired girl in a floral dress, buying a Coca-Cola around 8 p.m., saying she was heading home for dinner. There was a man standing by her car in the lot, tall, wearing a blue shirt, he said. I didn't hear them talk, just saw her smile lightly, then they both headed toward the bridge. Ford didn't respond, only jotted it down in his notebook, his handwriting slightly shaky. By noon, search teams expanded their range around the church and the road to the Bosque Bridge. Dogs were released along the riverbank, nets cast over the water. Under the scorching near 100-degree heat, sweat-soaked men combed through every patch of grass and rocky bank. Ford stood on a slope, gazing down, his hand tightening around a cigarette, eyes fixed on the murky river flowing silently, nothing but the hum of insects and swirling wind. By afternoon, Ford gathered the team at a makeshift command post near the bridge. The eastern and southern routes turned up nothing, only faint tire tracks on wet soil. As reports were compiled, Sergeant Porter walked in, holding his notebook. 2 farmers said they saw a yellow car's lights stop near the bridge last night, he said quietly. They thought someone was fishing, so they didn't pay attention. The lights went out after a few minutes. Ford stayed silent, staring out the window where the sunset was turning the river red. We'll expand the search that way, he said softly, his voice trailing like the river's flow. If the car stopped at Bosque, that's where it started. He ordered the firefighters to prepare floodlights and small boats for overnight work. As the sun set, faint yellow beams began sweeping the water. In the thick darkness, everyone shared the same heavy feeling. They weren't searching for a lost person anymore, but tracing something that had vanished forever into that river night. On the second morning of the search, Waco's sky was overcast with dull gray, heavy with humidity. The Bosque River's murky water churned slowly, the wind carrying the sour smell of mud and burnt grass. The search team left the command post early, pickup trucks carrying men and dogs filing down the dirt road toward the bridge. Sheriff Wallace Ford sat in the passenger seat, clutching a crumpled map marked with red circles. He stared silently through the fogged window, his deep-set shadowed eyes betraying 2 sleepless nights. At around 7:15 a.m., a firefighter leading the group signaled to stop. At a turn about 200 yards from the Bosque Bridge, something glinted faintly under low trees. Ford stepped out, mud clinging to his pant legs, his eyes following a flash of pale yellow metal through the morning mist. As they approached, a familiar shape emerged, the yellow Chevrolet Nova, parked askew off the road, its rear wheels sunk into wet soil. The driver's door was slightly ajar, the window half down, keys still in the ignition. No engine sound, no signs of activity around, just a thick silence, as if the car had been there for ages. Ford signaled the officers to fan out and secure the area. He approached, peering through the window. On the passenger seat, an old floral cloth bag lay open, containing a wallet, some loose change, a small notebook, and an unopened Coca-Cola can. The driver's seat was pushed back, the steering wheel slightly turned, as if someone taller than Anna had sat there. Ford touched the hood, stone cold. He opened the door, the smell of gas and damp fabric wafting out. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just a thin layer of dust on the gearshift, and wet mud caked on the floor. Typical of the Bosque area. Looks like she stopped willingly, Sergeant Porter said, scanning the surroundings where a few black crows perched on power lines. Ford didn't answer, stepping to the rear of the car. Footprints mixed in the mud, hard to identify, but he noticed at least 2 types, one small, possibly female, and another larger, clearly male. He signaled for photos. Jerry Maynard, the youngest officer, pulled out a Polaroid camera, snapping a few shots, the images emerging wet with ink. Ford held them, his eyes never leaving the car. No signs of a struggle, no blood, her bag still here, Porter muttered. What do you think? Ford sighed, flicking ash to the ground. Maybe she left with someone, or was lured away. His voice was soft, tinged with doubt. The team spent nearly an hour combing the area. They found a tissue caught in a bush, some rusty cans, and tire tracks overlapping older marks, possibly from a truck or sedan, unclear. The dog sniffed along the riverbank, but lost the scent at a rapid current. As the sun climbed, the heat pressed down like a weight on their shoulders, and Ford called off the morning search. He ordered the car towed to the station for further inspection. On the drive back, Ford sat holding a Polaroid of the Nova tilted on the grassy shoulder, his eyes fixed on the image. "Don't let anyone near the scene until I'm back," he told Porter. But by afternoon, when Ford returned with a technician, the area was trampled by curious onlookers. Local kids gathered to gawk, and neighbors said they'd seen the car early that morning and stopped to look. Fire truck tire marks, footprints, and churned mud ruined the scene. Nothing was pristine enough to collect. Ford stood silently for a long moment, the afternoon sun glinting off sweat on his forehead. He knew he'd lost the first, and possibly only, chance at real evidence. "Tow the car to the station," he said quietly. The yellow Nova was hooked up, its rear wheels creaking, leaving 2 long tracks in the dirt road. As the convoy left, the Bosque River remained silent, indifferent to the frantic humans above. For a moment, Ford glanced back, the sunset reflecting off the towed car's windshield, making it flash one last time before fading into Texas red dust. No one spoke on the way back. Ford clutched the mud-stained Polaroid, flipping it over in his hands, his mind heavy with a feeling he wasn't ready to name. The sense that this wasn't about someone running away, and somewhere along that silent river, something was waiting to be found. In the garage behind Bell County's station, the yellow Chevrolet Nova sat under an old tarp, its wheels still caked with red mud. The smell of metal, gas, and damp earth hung heavy in the air. Wallace Ford leaned against the wall, holding a cold coffee, staring at the car as if it might speak. 3 days had passed since its discovery by the Bosque, and still no trace of the girl. Dawn crept in, faint sunlight filtering through dusty windows, brushing the pale yellow car, making it gleam like a forgotten relic in a museum of time. 2 department technicians, Jerry Maynard and Porter, began the examination. They had no modern forensic lab, just a Polaroid camera, some plastic evidence bags, and an old spiral notebook. "Photograph every angle," Ford said, his voice low and clipped. Jerry nodded, snapping shots, the images emerging blurry, streaked with sunlight and mud. He photographed the front, driver's seat, steering wheel, front floor, then opened the back door. On the ground, a large footprint stood out in the red mud, deep with thick horizontal treads, rounded toe, size around 10. "Not a woman's shoe," Jerry said, leaning closer. Porter glanced over, jotting quickly. "Footprint, male size approximately. No one brought a ruler or scale markers. Just a few scrawled lines in the notebook." Ford stared at the footprint for a long time, his shirt damp with sweat. "Take a mud sample, send it to the Dallas lab," he said. Porter shrugged. "Sir, we don't have sample tubes, and this month's transport budget is gone." Ford went silent, crushing his cigarette, his gaze fixed. In 1970s Texas, local police rarely got funding for cases without a body. "Then just document it," he said finally. A quiet order, but later, it would mark the first crack in the entire investigation. They opened the back door, shining a flashlight on the seat cushions. Below, dried mud caked in patches, mixed with white fabric threads. Porter picked one up, rolling it between his fingers. "Could be from her dress. Bag it," Ford said. But Porter had no evidence bags. He wrapped it in a scrap of notepaper, tucking it into his shirt pocket. Checking the front floor, they found faint scratches on the dashboard, possibly from fingernails. But no one took close-ups. The Polaroid had only 2 shots left. Jerry used the last one on the undercarriage, where thick Bosque mud clung, reeking of earth and rust. By afternoon, Ford ordered the car sealed. "Keep it in storage for now, pending further orders," he said. But no one came to re-examine it. 2 days later, Ruth Caldwell called, her voice trembling. "I heard you found her car. Can I see it?" Ford paused, then agreed. The next morning, Ruth arrived with her nephew. She placed a hand on the hood, her sunken eyes peering through the dusty glass. The rearview mirror reflected her haggard face and the empty interior. She said nothing, only nodded slightly, tears falling silently. After she left, Ford ordered the car released to the family. "No reason to hold it," he told Porter, his voice slow. Porter hesitated. "Sir, the footprint, the mud." Ford cut him off. "We've got nowhere to store it, and Dallas won't take samples without a criminal case." It was the third afternoon since the car's discovery. The file noted briefly, "Vehicle returned to owner. No evidence of foul play." The yellow Nova was towed from storage, dried mud flaking off the undercarriage, scattering like pieces of evidence, slipping away. When it reached the Caldwell yard, Ruth stood waiting, wine tugging her hair, eyes following the car her daughter once drove. She didn't dare open the door, only asked a neighbor to cover it with a tarp and lock it in the garage. That evening, in the Bell County office, Ford sat at his desk, staring at the Polaroids lined up on the wood. Every image was blurry, poorly lit, key details lost in shadows. One footprint photo was nearly indecipherable, just a faint black smudge. Ford picked up a pen, writing a brief report, no sign of struggle, possible voluntary disappearance. He set the pen down, rubbing his eyes. Outside, crickets chirped monotonously, like a clock ticking out of justice's orbit. 3 days later, Anna Caldwell's Nova, the case's only physical evidence, was back with her family. In Bell County's evidence locker, all that remained were a few blurry photos, a loose note, and the dried smell of Bosque mud. No one in that room knew the case's most critical pieces had been right before them, brushed away like dust off a table, lightly, carelessly, and gone forever. On the fourth day after the car's discovery, Wallace Ford began the first round of interviews. He sat in a small room behind the Bell County station, its walls stained and ceiling fan creaking like a countdown. On the desk lay Polaroids of the yellow Chevrolet Nova, a few reports, and a witness list scribbled in pencil. Ford rubbed his eyes, sipped bitter coffee, and signaled Porter to bring in the first person. The man who walked in was Carl Benson, the night shift worker at the Gulf Station, the last person to see Anna Caldwell. He was young, his hair slick with sweat, his shirt stained with the smell of motor oil. Ford closely observed his demeanor as he revisited the details from the previous statement. "When did she stop by?" "Around 10 to 8, sir." "Alone?" "Yes, but when she stepped out, there was a man standing near the payphone." "I thought they knew each other." Ford leaned forward. "Did you get a good look at his face?" Carl shook his head, lips slightly pursed. "I just remember he was tall, dark hair, wearing a navy blue shirt with white paint on the collar. I didn't think much of it. When I went outside, they were both gone." Ford stayed silent, writing slowly in his notebook. "Male, tall, blue shirt, seen at gas station." Before Carl left, Ford asked one more question. "Did you hear them say anything?" "No, sir. Just saw her give a small smile, like she was reassuring someone." That afternoon, Ford and Porter visited Bright Stitch, the tailor shop where Anna worked. The shop was still open, sewing machines humming steadily, the sound of needles clicking against fabric. The manager, Harriet Cooper, a middle-aged woman with hands dusted in thread lint, recalled Anna leaving around 7:40 p.m., carrying her cloth bag and wearing a denim jacket. She said she'd be home early for dinner with her mom. She even smiled, told me to save her a slice of apple pie for tomorrow. Ford asked about Anna's relationships with coworkers or customers. Cooper shook her head. Everyone liked her. No enemies, no debts, no dating anyone from the shop. Porter jotted notes, glancing briefly at Ford, as if checking if he was thinking of something else. That evening, Ford summoned Anna's ex-boyfriend, Mark Ridley, a 22-year-old senior at Baylor University. Mark arrived at the station looking exhausted, his face pale, hands tightly clasped. When questioned, he said, "We broke up 4 months ago, no fights, no bad blood." "I don't know anything about this, sir." Ford asked where he was that night. "I was working at the library, someone can confirm. I talked to one of the librarians until 10:30. A later check verified Mark's alibi. Ford closed his notebook, eyeing him for a moment. "If you remember anything, call me directly." Mark nodded, his gaze distant, as if he still couldn't believe Anna was truly gone. In the days that followed, the witness list grew, but amid the scattered testimonies, one name kept resurfacing: Pastor Raymond Hale, who had spoken with Anna at Waco Baptist Church the week before. A friend from the choir said Hale often showed special attention to Anna, praising her singing and pure soul. Others recalled him driving past the tailor shop a few times, claiming it was to say hello. When Porter brought this to Ford, he looked up, silent for a long moment. He'd heard that name before, the same man who joined the initial search team and happened to find a handkerchief embroidered with AC by the river. That afternoon, Ford sent for Hale to come to the station. He arrived on time, wearing a crisp white shirt, collar buttoned neatly, graying hair combed smooth, clutching a small Bible. As he entered, he offered a faint smile, his eyes calm. "Pastor," Ford began, "we just need to clarify a few details. You spoke with Miss Caldwell, correct?" Hale nodded, his voice low and silky. "Yes, she was a good person, often helped teach kids at church. I saw her like a daughter." Ford watched his every move, every blink, every slight hand gesture on the table. "Did you see her, the night of the incident?" Hale shook his head. "No, I was home. When I heard she was missing, I joined the search. I just wanted to help." Ford pulled a Polaroid of the search team from the file and slid it toward him. "That's you, right?" Hale looked at it, smiling. "Yes, I remember that day. I'm the one who found the handkerchief. Truly heartbreaking." "Where did you say you found it?" "Right at the river's edge, near where the car was found." Ford nodded, taking notes, but something nagged at him: the timing of Hale's presence. Reports showed Hale arrived at least 20 minutes before the police, yet no one had asked why. After the interview, as Hale left, the afternoon light slanted through the window, illuminating his face. Ford watched him go, a chill running down his spine. Deputy Tommy Greer, silent until now, said quietly, "Something's off in his eyes." Ford turned to him, asking softly, "What do you mean?" Greer hesitated, then replied, "I don't know, like he's hiding something, but believes he's innocent." The interview report was typed that evening, concluding with "no conclusive evidence, subject cooperative." There was no basis to detain him, no corroborating witnesses. The case stalled there. Outside, the first rain of the season pattered on the station's tin roof. In the dim yellow light, Ford sat alone at his desk, fingers tapping the Polaroid of the white handkerchief. He didn't say it aloud, but a question formed in his mind, one he'd carry for years: why was a volunteer helper at the scene of a disappearance before the police? 3 weeks after the final interview, the Caldwell case had barely progressed. No new witnesses, no solid evidence, and every time Ford sent a preliminary report to the state office, he received a curt reply: "No new lead. Continue monitoring." Day after day he reread the worn reports, searching for a gap, a small detail to spark a new lead, but everything fell silent. Outside, Waco moved on, as if nothing had happened. Bright Stitch glowed with lights, the Gulf Station stayed open each night, and Waco Baptist Church rang its bells every Sunday. Only one mother sat by her small home's window, staring at the dirt road where a yellow car once returned each evening. Ford began feeling pressure from above. Bell County had a limited budget, and a traceless disappearance was never a priority. At the weekly meeting, the administrative chief set the Caldwell file on the table, his voice flat. 3 weeks, no body, no signs of a crime. "Don't drag this out." Ford didn't respond. He stared out the window at the early fall wind scattering dry leaves across the station yard, then signed the final report: "No foul play suspected." Those words, seemingly routine paperwork, marked the end of the only effort that might have brought the girl back. The next day, the case was officially filed as missing person. Deputy Greer asked quietly, "Are we really closing it?" Ford didn't look up. "We've got nothing to hold on to. No evidence, no crime, no budget. You know the drill," he said it calmly. But his eyes fixed on the Polaroid of the AC embroidered handkerchief, as if he didn't believe his own signature. That afternoon, Ford personally took the evidence to the storage room behind the station. The small room, lit by a dim yellow bulb, smelled of old paper and rusted metal. He placed the 3 remaining pieces of evidence in a cardboard box. The handkerchief sloppily wrapped in plastic, 6 blurry Polaroids, and an 11-page handwritten report. He wrote in red pen on the label, #74 Caldwell. Missing person. As he sealed the box with tape, he paused, staring at the words he'd just written. The red ink blurred slightly, as if it too resisted clinging to the dust-covered cases resting silently here. That evening, Ford sat alone in his office, the door ajar, listening to the rain outside. The Caldwell file lay neatly on his desk, not yet stored. His mind kept returning to Pastor Hale, his soft voice, his chillingly calm eyes. He recalled a small detail from Hale's statement about finding the handkerchief. "I saw it at the water's edge, like someone placed it there to be found." That sentence kept Ford awake all night. But despite his gut telling him something was wrong, he could do nothing more. No evidence, no basis for a search warrant, and in the eyes of local authorities, the case was just a young girl who left home for her own reasons. On the last day of the month, Ford carried the #74 Caldwell box to the basement, placing it on the 3rd shelf to the left, among others. #72 Martin, #73 Ross, #74 Caldwell, #75 Davenport. He brushed dust off the label, then locked the storage door. The iron lock clanged sharply, echoing in the empty hallway. As he walked back, he paused at a window, looking out at the empty road. The rain had stopped, leaving only a thin mist drifting past the streetlights. He lit his last cigarette, the smoke curling around his gaunt face. That night, in his personal journal, Ford wrote one line. Caldwell case. No leads, no closure. The short, scrawled words, as if he himself didn't want to believe them. From then on, Anna Caldwell's name vanished from Bell County reports. The Chevrolet Nova was returned to her family. The church stopped mentioning her, and the search volunteers resumed their daily lives. Only the cardboard box labeled #74 Caldwell remained in the dark storage, silent under a thin layer of dust, like an unmarked grave in a cemetery of unanswered questions. In the years that followed, Anna Caldwell's name faded from Waco's memory like a wisp of smoke. After the case was closed, no one asked further. In 1975, the Waco Tribune-Herald ran a brief note. Caldwell disappearance, no new developments. A week later, it was replaced by a story about a grain warehouse fire in Belmead. From then on, no one spoke of the 19-year-old who vanished on a sweltering August night. In the county police storage room, the #74 Caldwell box sat silently on its iron shelf, next to older files, gathering dust each year. New officers occasionally noticed the faded label, joking, "Who's Caldwell?" and no one answered. Ford had been transferred to a regional office, while Deputy Greer moved to traffic. The room where he'd signed "No foul play suspected" now held only yellowed walls and the musty smell of old paper. Around 1978, Ruth Caldwell sold the small house on the dirt road, moving to live with relatives in Temple. People said she took her daughter's Chevrolet Nova, keeping it tarped in a shed. The car never started again. By 1982, authorities seized abandoned property, and the Nova was scrapped with dozens of others in the county lot. The transfer record noted briefly, item N482, vehicle, yellow Nova, scrapped. No one knows if Ford saw that record. Years later, he retired early due to heart issues and passed away in 1985. By then, no one in Bell County truly remembered the Caldwell case. The 1980s passed, and investigative technology remained stagnant. No DNA, no biological testing, no footprint databases. All police had back then were instincts and blurry Polaroids, pencil descriptions that faded easily. Once, during a heavy rain that flooded the storage room, dozens of case files were ruined, papers clumping into soggy masses. When workers cleaned up, they discarded most of the damaged files, keeping only a few intact boxes. Among them was #74 Caldwell, its tape still sealed, the red ink faded to brown. No one opened it, perhaps out of laziness, or because no one knew what it held. Occasionally, new trainees at Bell County were assigned to clean the storage room. They'd see the dusty boxes, read the labels, and laugh, probably just old nonsense from decades ago. One young trainee scrawled on the Caldwell box's lid, "Old missing girl, 1974. That note, too, faded over time like everything else. By the late 1980s, America entered a new era of forensic science, but Bell County remained stuck in the past. Typewriters jammed, paper files stacked high, and the basement storage room reeked of time's mold. No one working there knew that, in a corner of the shelf, the last evidence of the Caldwell case remained, the AC embroidered handkerchief in a torn plastic bag, 6 faded Polaroids, and Ford's handwritten report, all waiting for someone, in another era, to open it again. In 1990, as Texas began its first digital case archiving program, many old cases were discarded. The #74 Caldwell box, though intact, was moved to the lowest shelf, reserved for non-criminal cases. No one objected, and no one checked its contents. The box sat there, thick with dust, its label faint but intact, a silent testament to a mistake buried by time. When the storage room's lights went out, the space sank into silence. Down the hallway, only the old air conditioner's hum droned like the tired breath of a sleeping justice system. And in that dark corner, among hundreds of nameless cases, #74 Caldwell remained, untouched, unseen, waiting 48 years to see light again. March 2022. After nearly half a century in the basement of the Bell County Sheriff's Office, the #74 Caldwell box was reopened. The storage room had changed. New iron racks, white LED lights, QR-coded management, but the smell of old paper and damp concrete was much the same as in 1974. Standing in the room that morning was Aaron Mills, a 42-year-old investigator with Texas Cold Case Review, a new state project to revisit unsolved disappearances. Lean and quiet, Mills had a habit of wearing nitrile gloves when handling files. At the project's kickoff, he'd said, "Every old file is a chance, not a shadow." When the list of old cases arrived from various counties, he picked a name almost no one remembered, Caldwell Anna. Mills found the box in the bottom corner of the third shelf, its label so faded he needed a flashlight to read it. He carefully placed it on a stainless steel table, peeling off the brittle tape. Inside, besides a few yellowed handwritten reports, were 3 pieces of evidence: a folded white handkerchief, 6 blurry Polaroids, and a small plastic bag with a brown hair stuck in dried mud. On the bag's edge, a scrawled note in ballpoint, found near vehicle, Bosque Bridge, August 1974. Mills put on a magnifying headset, shining a light. The hair was thin, about 7 centimeters long, no blood, but still intact. He exhaled softly, murmuring, "Still here, unbelievable." Ford's report remained, its bold, right slanting handwriting concluding, "No foul play suspected." Mills reread that line, lips pursed, no signs of a crime. He wondered how anyone could conclude that when a 19-year-old vanished with her car abandoned by a river, the question lingered all morning. That afternoon, Mills took the evidence to the Central Processing Lab. Technician Laura Chen helped him examine it under a microscope. "Real hair, not fabric," she said, voice excited. "We can extract DNA if it hasn't degraded." Mills nodded. "What about the handkerchief?" Laura opened the bag, spreading the yellowed white cloth on the table. One corner bore AC embroidered in blue thread, the stitching meticulous but faded. She swabbed it lightly, placing the sample in a tube. "If there's epithelial residue, we might match it. With luck, we'll find male DNA." Mills smiled, a mix of excitement and disbelief. 48 years, and the evidence was still intact enough to speak. Among the Polaroids was one of the 1974 search team, 4 men by the Bosque River, gray sky behind them, one tall figure in a white shirt, his face half lit, half shadowed. Beneath, A handwritten note, volunteer, Pastor R.H. Mills jotted a quick note, then scanned the photo into the digital archive. The initials piqued his curiosity. He opened his laptop, accessing Waco's parish database, searching for pastors active from 1970 to 1980. A name appeared within minutes. Reverend Raymond Hale, Waco Baptist Church, retired 1985, died 1992. Mills paused, reading a note, praised by the community for volunteer work and assisting in missing persons searches. He wrote in red pen, Hale, present at scene. That night, in his office, Mills opened a new digital file, Caldwell, Anna. Under notes, he typed, evidence recovered, AC embroidered handkerchief, brown hair, Polaroid of search team, DNA testing needed for both samples, check CODIS database, review Raymond Hale, and search volunteers. 3 days later, all samples were sent to the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab in Austin, the state's most advanced facility. As Mills signed the transfer form, a technician teased, another 40-year-old case. He replied, 48. But the girl still hasn't come home. The words silenced the room briefly. While awaiting results, Mills dug into old reports. He found a brief note from Deputy Tommy Greer in 1974. Something's off in Pastor Hale's eyes. No explanation, no evidence, just a gut feeling. To Mills, it was a linchpin. He pinned the note to his board, next to the Nova's photo, and wrote below, Hale, verify connections. A week later, the lab emailed confirmation of receiving the samples. The examiner noted, handkerchief shows mixed skin cell traces, possible Y chromosome DNA extraction. Hair has sufficient follicle for a full genetic profile. Mills read it, leaning back, heart racing. He knew one matching sequence could turn the Caldwell case into a new chapter after half a century. That night, he stayed late, the #74 Caldwell box open on his desk. It held only empty wrappings now, but to him, it was no longer a relic, but the start of a new journey. Outside, a Texas spring wind blew through dry fields, stirring Bosque's red dust, clouding the glass. Mills lit a cigarette, watching the smoke curl like fine thread, thinking of the brown-haired girl forgotten for 48 years. Maybe this time, he thought, she'd get to speak. 3 weeks after sending the samples, Aaron Mills' inbox pinged softly in the quiet afternoon. He was in the records room, beside the empty #74 Caldwell box, when he saw the bold subject line, DPS Crime Lab, DNA results ready. His hand trembled as he opened the attachment. The 3-page report's first lines made his heart pound. Biological sample from white handkerchief shows 2 DNA sources. Source 1, female. Source 2, male. Y chromosome DNA matches 99.99987% with reference sample in Texas State Database, identity confirmed as Raymond Hale, male born 1948, residing in Temple, Texas. Mills sank back, silent. The room seemed to shrink around him. That name, Raymond Hale, the same one scrawled under the Polaroid, the pastor of Waco Baptist, the volunteer in the search. The man Deputy Tommy Greer had noted, something's off in his eyes, and now his DNA was on the missing girl's handkerchief. He reread the lab's conclusion, his heart tightening each time. At the end of page 3 was a verification, analysis performed via STR mix and CODIS 2.0, random match probability, 1 in 220 trillion. No room for doubt. That man had left his mark on the only remaining evidence. That afternoon, Mills drove to Austin, meeting technician Laura Chen at the lab. She led him to the sample storage area, showing 2 small vials preserved in liquid nitrogen. I double-checked, she said firmly. Results are solid. No system error. The male DNA is on the handkerchief's inner surface, direct contact with a hand or skin. Mills asked, any chance of contamination? Someone else touching it? Laura shook her head. No. The DNA is strong enough to show prolonged handling, not a casual touch. On the drive back to Waco, a rare Texas drizzle fell. Mills turned on the radio, but heard only the wind whipping the windshield. His mind raced with questions. Hale, the respected pastor who preached to the town, who led the 1974 search. How did his DNA end up on the missing girl's handkerchief? If he was the culprit, why join the search? Guilt, or to control the scene? Back at Bell County, Mills updated the Caldwell file. Reopened, active cold case investigation. Under suspect, he entered the first name in 48 years, Hale, Raymond, Temple, Texas. That night he stayed late. Old reports spread across his desk, beside the 1974 Polaroid of Hale, tall, broad-shouldered, face half-shadowed. He used software to enlarge and adjust contrast. Under artificial light, the face clarified, deep-set eyes, lips tightly pressed, gaze not at the camera, but elsewhere. A look both calm and distant, sending a chill through Mills. The next morning, he presented a preliminary report to the Texas Cold Case Review Board. The closed-door meeting had 4 attendees. When Mills displayed the DNA results, the room fell silent. "We're talking about a former pastor?" an officer asked quietly. Mills nodded. Yes, he served at Waco Baptist from 1969 to 1984, then moved to Temple, retired in 1990. Currently lives in Willow Creek with his wife and granddaughter. He paused, taking a breath. His DNA is on evidence from the 1974 disappearance scene. That's no coincidence. Captain Rodriguez, the board chief, leaned back, staring at the screen. "Do we have grounds for a legal pursuit?" Mills replied, "Not yet, but I've requested a warrant for a confirmation sample and a home search." Rodriguez nodded slightly. "Do it. It's time that girl got the truth." After the meeting, Mills called the Temple police. "I need updated info on a resident named Raymond Hale," he said. The duty officer checked the database and replied, "He's still here, 74, in good health, no criminal record. Honorary pastor at a small church near Rushing Avenue." Mills hung up, a chill running down his spine. That evening, Mills drove to Temple just to observe the house from a distance. The sky was dark, yellow light spilling through the window. On the porch, an old man with silver hair, Hale himself, was watering flowers. His movements slow and peaceful. The man who once stood before congregations of hundreds was now a quiet figure in a small neighborhood. Mills sat in his car, jotting quick notes. Every gesture, every pause of Hale's was recorded. Hale moved slowly, slight limp in left leg, but still fit. No signs of someone carrying a secret. Back in Waco, he added a report to the digital file, "Male DNA matches Raymond Hale. Recommend formal reinvestigation, verify living witnesses, and track suspects' movements from 1974, 1975. Initiate process for search warrant." Mills woke at 5 a.m. the next day, unable to shake one thought, the Polaroid. He'd studied it dozens of times the previous night. A blurry photo, uneven lighting, capturing the initial search team by the Bosque River. Using infrared-enhanced software to enlarge it, he could clearly see the trees in the background, a small fire truck, and 4 men in a line. The man on the far left was Raymond Hale. Around 26 then, tall, dark hair parted neatly, left hand relaxed, right hand resting on something lower. Mills wasn't certain, but he suspected it was the roof of the yellow Chevrolet Nova. He called the digital forensics lab at Texas Cold Case Review, where imaging engineer Sarah Gutierrez worked. She took the scanned file, went silent for a long moment, then said, "Give me 3 days, I'll clarify every layer of light." Mills thanked her, then sat in his car watching the Texas sky turn pale orange. He knew if the photo truly showed Hale before police arrived, it would be the first evidence proving he was at the scene earlier than reported. 3 days later, Sarah sent back a high-resolution digital set with light analysis. "You should sit down for this," she said, over the phone. "I used reflective detail reconstruction, boosting dark areas 400% without altering pixel structure. The results, clearer than you'd expect." When the screen loaded, Mills froze. In the frame, Hale stood angled, almost touching the Nova's roof. Morning light glinted off his right wrist. A shiny metal watch, round face, silver band. It wasn't random. Mills had seen it the night before, while watching Hale in Temple. The 74-year-old still wore an identical silver watch, round face, lightly notched bezel, 1970s, mesh band. Mills zoomed in. The watch in the photo had a white face, two short hands, a mesh band, and a small scratch on the outer edge. His heart raced. That scratch, same position, same shape, he'd seen it on Hale's wrist, as he leaned to water flowers. He wrote in the file, Polaroid scan, Hale standing by Nova, wearing silver watch, matches current item. Confirms presence at scene before police arrived. But what struck him most was the photo's timing. Comparing the lighting with Waco's August 1974 weather data, he noted the shadows leaned west, indicating the sun was rising from the southeast. That meant the photo was taken before 7 a.m. Ford's report stated the first search team reached the area at 8:15. That's over an hour's gap. So who took the photo? And why was Hale there so early? Mills checked Hale's original statement. He claimed to have joined the search around 9 a.m. with church members. Clearly, this timing contradiction proved he lied from the start. Mills sent the report and photo to Rodriguez. Rodriguez read it and said, "Good. But we need to prove the photo was taken before Ford arrived." Mills called the Waco Tribune-Herald archives to track down original photos from the 1974 search. A veteran staffer, Henry Poole, said, "We have old 35mm film from that case." A photographer, Ray Bowers, took them. "I'll check." The next afternoon, Poole called back, excited. "Found the negatives. There's a few frames of the Bosque Bridge. One matches your Polaroid, but from a different angle." When Mills reviewed the scanned negatives, it was clear, same scene, same yellow Nova, but no police barriers, no tape. Proof the photo was taken before authorities arrived. Hale's figure, pointing toward the river, looked tense, as if giving orders. At his feet was a drag mark in the mud, like a tire swerve from a sudden stop. Mills' spine chilled. Hale was there at least an hour early, possibly right after the Nova was abandoned, and he knew exactly where the handkerchief was found. Mills aligned the Polaroid and newspaper negative to compare shadow positions. Software confirmed a perfect match in light direction, placing the photo's time between 6:40–6:50 a.m. on August 20th, 1974, 90 minutes before Sheriff Ford reached the scene. He uploaded the data to the digital file with a report. Digital image analysis confirms Hale at scene before 7 a.m. August 20th, 1974. Polaroid proves direct contact with Nova before official discovery. Silver watch detail matches suspect's current personal item. When Rodriguez read it, he clapped Mills' shoulder. "You've got what Ford never had, visual proof." That night, Mills didn't go home. He sat in his office, studying the 1974 image of young Hale, calm, confident amid the chaos. Below the photo, a scrawled note from the original photographer, volunteer, Pastor R.H. Mills pulled up the image again, zooming in on Hale's mouth, a faint, barely noticeable smile, chilling, like he knew what was being captured, and smiled at his own guilt. Outside, Waco was quiet, the wind carrying the dry scent of the distant bosque. Mills set the printed photo on his desk, adding a line to the file label, "Hale at scene before police." This is no longer a missing person case, it's a murder. The next morning, as Texas' first sunlight crept through the office window, Aaron Mills began the task he knew would shape the investigation, reconstructing the timeline of August 19, 1974. He spread out all the old documents, Ford's handwritten reports, witness statements, Waco Baptist Church records, and a pastoral log he'd borrowed from the diocese archive. The smell of old paper, faded ink, and dusty files filled the room like frozen time. First, the original file. Anna Caldwell left Brightstitch at 7:40 p.m. She stopped at the Gulf station for a Coca-Cola, saying she was going home for dinner with Mom, then vanished on the road to the Bosque Bridge. Reports confirmed Carl Benson last saw her at 7:52. Ruth Caldwell's missing person call came the next morning at 5:12. Mills wrote on a whiteboard, 7:40, Leaves tailor shop 7:52. Seen at Gulf Station 8:10, 8:20. Car abandoned near Bosque Bridge, 8:15 next morning. First search team finds scene. Next, he pinned a copy of the 1974 Waco Baptist Church schedule. It noted, choir practice, Monday 08/19 6 o'clock, 7:30 p.m., led by Reverend Raymond Hale. This meant Hale was at the church until at least 7:30, barring unexpected events. But in his 1974 statement, Hale claimed he left the church at 8 p.m., went straight home, and stayed there all evening. Mills frowned. The 30-minute gap between the church schedule and Hale's statement wasn't minor. It opened a window. He contacted Eleanor Wood, the 1974 choir director, now over 80, living in Abilene. Her voice trembled but was clear. "I remember that practice. It was brutally hot." Hale ended early, around 7:30. He said he had urgent business outside town. "I thought it was a pastoral call," Mills asked. "Did he say where?" She replied, "No," just grabbed his leather briefcase and left through the south gate. He recorded her words verbatim, typing into the digital log. Hale leaves church 19:30. Victim leaves station 19:52. Travel time between points, approximately 18 minutes. Possible encounter on Highway 84 toward Bosque. Mills opened a 1974 Waco map, drawing a line from Waco Baptist Church to the Gulf Station. The distance was just over 5 miles, a 10-12-minute drive. If Hale left at 7:30, he could have reached the station by 7:42, 7:45, right when Anna was buying her Coca-Cola. He stood still, staring at the board, the red ink glowing under the light. The pieces were aligning like a mechanism waiting decades to restart. He revisited Hale's 1974 statement, "That evening I was home. Didn't leave Temple. I heard about the missing girl the next morning when church members called, but Temple was nearly 35 miles from Waco, over 40 minutes by car. He couldn't be home in Temple and lead the Waco search the next morning without prior knowledge." Church records showed he served in Waco until December 1974, not yet moved. So why claim he was in Temple? Mills noted, residence discrepancy, intentional. Next he checked Ford's scene report. Witness Pastor Hale claimed to find handkerchief at 9:15 a.m. by Bosque River. However, Polaroid lighting matches 6:40, 6:50 timeframe, timing contradiction. It all formed a 25-minute gap from Hale leaving the church, 7:30, to Anna leaving the station, 7:52. Just enough time for him to drive to the road toward the Bosque Bridge, intercept her car, and do something no one ever recounted. Mills sat silently, listening to the wall clock's steady ticks. He wrote one line in bold, slanted text across the whiteboard. "That gap is where she disappeared." He photographed the board, sending it to Rodriguez with a brief note. "All evidence points one way. Hale left the church during the victim's disappearance window. 25-minute gap unaccounted for. Request warrant to search Hale's home, seize silver watch, and confirm DNA sample." That afternoon, Rodriguez called back. "You sure?" Mills replied without hesitation. "Certain, it's not just coincidence. He was there. We have DNA photos, and now a timeline." That evening, Mills returned to his desk, flipping on the dim lamp. He opened a copy of the church log. Hale's neat handwriting, August 19th entry with one line, "Choir practice, ended early. The Lord teaches us when to leave." Mills reread it, a chill down his spine. When to leave? Perhaps the moment Hale walked out of the church, drove to Highway 84, and saw a young girl stop for a Coca-Cola. Outside, Texas darkened. In the office, only the lamp lit the whiteboard with its red lines. 1930, Hale leaves church. 1952, Anna vanishes. 2010, car abandoned. 3 points, just close enough to hold a crime. And between them, a 25-minute silence, a silence lasting 48 years. 3 days after Mills' report on the 25-minute gap, the Bell County Court approved a search warrant. Early that morning, Temple's sky was veiled in thin fog, the first sunlight barely touching the quiet suburban homes on Willow Creek. 4 police cars, sirens off, stopped before Raymond Hale's white-painted wooden house. On the porch, purple bougainvillea swayed in the breeze, and faint yellow light glowed from inside. Aaron Mills stepped out, an old FBI jacket draped over his shoulder, warrant in hand. The door opened after his second knock. Hale, now 74, appeared, silver hair, thin, but with sharp eyes, and a faint smile. "Who are you looking for?" he asked, voice raspy. Mills showed the paper. "We have a search warrant, per Texas Penal Code 18.04, regarding the 1974 Anna Caldwell disappearance investigation." Hale nodded slightly, unsurprised. "Oh, that girl," he whispered, stepping aside. "Come in, but I don't remember much." The house was overly tidy, Bibles neatly stacked, dusty family photos, a ticking grandfather clock. Mills split the team, one group upstairs. He and Lieutenant Porter took the basement. The basement door, behind a wooden cabinet, was locked with an old iron bolt. Hale claimed there was no key, but when Porter tugged, it opened easily. A musty smell of rust and rotting wood wafted up. Below, dim light revealed old wooden shelves, cardboard boxes, and a small desk covered with a tarp. Mills carefully lifted the tarp. Beneath was a map of the Bosque River area, its corners yellowed, but markings clear. 2 red X's in ballpoint ink, one at the bridge where the Nova was found, another deeper west, near the river's wooded edge. In the corner, handwritten search area, August 20th, 1974. Mills called Porter over, voice low but firm. "Log it, photograph, seize it, don't touch anything else." In a desk drawer, they found a Kodak 8mm film roll, wrapped in brown paper, labeled in shaky handwriting. "Search, 1974. Mills held it up, the light catching its faded copper glow. He looked at Hale, standing calmly on the stairs, as if watching someone clean his room. "You filmed this, didn't you?" Mills asked. Hale smiled vaguely. "Maybe. I filmed a lot, son. I wanted to keep every memory from those days." The tech team brought a portable projector. When the first light hit the damp concrete wall, flickering images appeared. The screen shook, but clear. The Bosque River, trees, then the yellow Chevrolet Nova. The footage trembled, but the camera moved closer. A flashlight beam sweeping the car's window. No police, no tape, just night, thick fog, and droning insects. The lens stopped at the glass, reflecting a young face, Raymond Hale, eyes wide, lips pressed, breath fogging the lens. In the background, a car engine shut off, and his voice whispered, "God, please forgive me." Mills stared at the screen, spine icy. "Turn it off," he said softly, voice catching. Porter stopped the projector, silent for a long moment. The footage was too clear. Hale was at the scene at night, before police arrived. He filmed the abandoned car himself. Mills continued searching the back shelves, filled with old boxes. In a torn carton, he found a small white cloth, caked with red mud. Wearing gloves, he lifted it, placing it on a metal table beside an old lighter and torn postcards. Under the light, the fabric glinted with faint synthetic fibers. He looked at Porter, then opened an evidence bag, sealing it carefully. "Send to Austin now. Have them compare it to Anna Caldwell's dress fabric," he said. Before leaving the basement, Mills glanced back. Hale stood at the railing, hand steady, face expressionless. "I just kept memories," he said evenly. "People forget quickly." "I don't," Mills replied softly. "Some things, Pastor, you should have let go." As they left, noon sunlight bathed the quiet street. Mills looked at the film in the sealed bag, the faded label clear, "Search, 1974. He knew this was the decisive evidence. If the cloth's test matched, this wasn't speculation anymore. It was a truth buried for half a century. 2 days later, Austin's lab results arrived. White cloth sample from Raymond Hale's basement contains polyester cotton blend, matching bright stitch 1974 dress fabric. Red mud, consistent with Bosque River clay composition. Mills set the lab results beside the film reel, whispering, "My God, every piece fit." Hale left the church during Anna's disappearance window. He was at the scene before police, wearing the same silver watch, leaving DNA on the victim's handkerchief, keeping a map marked with the location, and filming the very car where she vanished. Late the next afternoon, Aaron Mills drove to a small town south of Austin, where Tommy Greer, the former deputy, was living out his final years. The gray brick house sat at the end of a quiet street, a rusted wind chime on the porch clinking thinly with each gust. Greer, now 80, was frail, white-haired, with deep-set eyes that still held a strange brightness. When Mills introduced himself, Greer nodded and gestured him inside. I knew this day would come. Inside, the room was filled with old case boxes and photos from his Bell County days. One showed him standing beside Wallace Ford, outside the station, in 1974. Greer poured coffee, his hands trembling. You're here about the Caldwell case, aren't you? Mills nodded. Yes, I'm reinvestigating. Things in the old file don't add up. I read your handwritten note. Something's off in Pastor Hale's eyes. Greer was silent for a long moment, staring out the window where the afternoon light was fading. I remember, that look haunted me my whole life. I knew something was wrong, but back then, some things you couldn't touch. Mills leaned forward. Did your superiors stop you? Greer gave a faint, bitter smile. Not just stop, they ordered. Ford suspected him, you know, but back then, Waco Baptist Church was a force. Pastor Hale wasn't just a preacher. He raised funds, made connections, social projects, politics. They called Ford from City Hall. One sentence, don't touch God's man. He pulled a thin, torn yellow folder from a desk drawer. I kept this for nearly half a century. Inside were a few faded typed pages and a small black and white photo of the handkerchief. Greer spoke softly. This is a copy of notes I wrote, never submitted officially. The night after Hale's interview, I went back to the evidence locker, checked the sealed bag. It had been opened. I told Ford. He went quiet, just said, don't ask any more, Tommy. Mills flipped through the pages. One line in blue ink. Evidence shows male fingerprints. No match in system, not sent for testing. In the margin, a small handwritten note. Possible Pastor Hale contact with evidence. Mills looked up, heart racing. You suspected him back then? Greer sighed. I was certain. He got to the scene before us, holding the handkerchief, saying he just saw it floating. I remember clearly, his hands were wet, red mud on his wrist. I asked to seal it, but by morning, the evidence was gone from the locker. I knew then what I had to do, stay quiet or lose my job. A long silence followed. Mills heard only the clocks ticking. Did you keep anything? Yes. Greer gave a sad smile. A piece of tape from the evidence bag. I cut off a small strip, hid it in an envelope, because I thought, one day justice would have the tools to listen. He opened a cabinet, pulling out an old envelope sealed with paper tape, scrawled with evidence fragment, Hale contact. Mills, wearing gloves, opened it. Inside was a yellowed strip of tape with specks of muddy dust. I don't know if it's worth anything, Greer said. But I kept it like a promise to that girl. Weeks later, Austin's lab results arrived. Male epithelial cells on tape sample match Raymond Hale's DNA profile. Mills read it, tears welling in his eyes, not from surprise, but from the bitter truth. Greer had been right, just too early in an era not brave enough to face justice head-on. He visited Greer again, handing him the printed results. Greer held the paper, hands shaking, eyes watering. I told Ford, I told him. His voice broke. You know, I dreamed of her. The brown-haired girl by the river, saying nothing, just looking at me like she blamed me. Maybe today, she can close her eyes. Mills gripped his hand. Thank you for keeping the truth. Greer smiled weakly. No, son. I only kept my own guilt. As Mills left the house, the afternoon light was gone. Only wind rustling through the pines. He carried the empty envelope, heart heavy. Driving back to Waco, he thought of those who stayed silent. Ford, Greer, those who bowed to the pastor's robe. He told himself, no one can order don't touch the church's man anymore. After the DNA results and Greer's testimony were verified, the Caldwell case was officially escalated to federal assistance. The FBI sent a behavioral analysis unit team from Quantico to Texas to profile the suspect. In a closed-door meeting in Austin, the room glowed with the blue light of a projector screen. Dozens of documents flashed on the wall, from Polaroids to the Bosque River map to the 8mm film copy. Amid stern faces, criminal psychologist Dr. Megan Leland's voice rang clear. Raymond Hale exhibits the classic behavior of a spiritual predator, a killer cloaked in religion. Mills studied the profile summary: male, born 1948, Baptist pastor, outwardly genial, highly controlled, obsessed with morality and punishment. Leland explained, "These individuals separate God's truth from human law. They see their actions as forced repentance or cleansing those they deem fallen." She pointed to Hale's 1974 photo, wide eyes, stern gaze. This man didn't just kill, he performed a ritual. Another slide showed the church log entry Mills found. "With the Lord teaches us when to leave," circled in red. Leland nodded. This shows his rationalization mechanism. He believed leaving the church that night was divinely guided. To him, sin didn't exist, only holy will. The FBI file revealed something Mills hadn't known. During 1970-1975, Waco Baptist received multiple anonymous letters from female parishioners about Pastor Hale, inviting private prayer in the chapel and touching them. All were suppressed by the church, never sent to police. This confirms a pattern of religious coercion, Leland said. The perpetrator doesn't seek typical physical gratification, but absolute power to be the instrument of judgment. Agent Dan O'Neill presented a behavioral comparison between the Caldwell case and two other disappearances in the Waco Bosque area in the 1970s. The room fell silent as two names appeared: Linda Parson, 1972, and Carol Reeves, 1975. Both were young women from local church communities, vanishing after choir practice or Bible study. Their cars were found near the river, doors unlocked, purses left behind. Both cases were labeled missing person, with no one prosecuted. "We reconstructed crime scenes from Bosque County maps," O'Neill said, pointing to a digital map. 3 points where Caldwell vanished, where Reeves' car was found, and Parsons' last known location. All form a triangle within 8 miles. Mills stared. "And he was the only one present in all 3 cases," Leland added. Church records show Hale oversaw pastoral duties in all 3 communities during that period. He moved between parishes like a traveling pastor, and each time he left, a girl disappeared. A behavior chart appeared. Victims aged 18-22, white females, church active, no signs of struggle, clean scenes, suspect joined searches. All matched the spiritual predator profile, a killer shielded by faith. Leland's voice lowered. "People like Hale see themselves as God's messengers." He punished what he saw as depravity, then played the comforter. He returned to scenes to pray, to witness his aftermath as a repentance ritual. Mills gripped his pen, recalling Hale in the 8mm film, cold face, breath fogging the lens, whispering, "God, please forgive me." He'd sensed then, what the FBI now confirmed, not remorse, but satisfaction from self-appointed judgment. The lead agent concluded, cross-referencing Caldwell with the other cases, "We're likely looking at a serial crime spree hidden by religion and local power." Hale didn't stop at one victim. He's the dark side of faith. As the meeting ended, Mills stood alone, staring at the map on the screen, 3 red dots connected by thin lines. He thought of the missing girls, the no foul play suspected files forgotten. Greer's words echoed, "Don't touch the church's man." This time, Mills knew they would have to. Driving back to Waco, Mills opened the window, the night wind stinging his face. In the file on the passenger seat, the FBI's conclusion lay on top, bolded: behavioral classification, spiritual predator, probability of serial offending, 92%. Recommended action, immediate warrant for interrogation. Mills tightened his grip on the wheel. He knew he was nearing the end, but also the most dangerous line, touching a man once seen as God's hand. On July 12, 2022, at 6:40 a.m., arrest warrant TX-07-22145 was signed by a Bell County judge and sent to the Texas Cold Case Review Office. The bolded header silenced the meeting room. Suspect Raymond Hale, homicide abduction, Anna Caldwell. Aaron Mills held the paper, hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. Nearly half a century later, the name once shielded by church power would face justice. At 7:15, 7 patrol cars, sirens off, moved toward St. John Baptist, the small temple church where Hale still preached Sunday mornings. Inside, an organ played slowly, the mournful sound of old hymns. Locals knew the silver-haired pastor behind the wooden pulpit, his gentle voice speaking of forgiveness and salvation. No one knew this would be his final sermon. Mills and the task force waited by the back door. Through a crack, he saw Hale in a black robe, head bowed before the altar, lips moving in prayer. Early light filtered through stained glass, splitting his face into light and shadow, half serene, half cold. At 7:32, as the final amen sounded, Lieutenant Porter signaled. The door swung open, boots echoing on the tile floor. Raymond Hale, you're under arrest per Bell County Court for murder and abduction in the 1974 Anna Caldwell case. Mills shouted, voice booming through the sanctuary. Parishioners froze, some gasped, some cried. Hale didn't resist. He turned, locking eyes with Mills, his gaze unnervingly calm. Then he gave a thin smile, gently setting his Bible on the pulpit. I knew this day would come, he said, voice low and clear. But you see, I only followed God's will. No one responded. Mills cuffed him, the metals clicked sharp amid the stifled sobs from the front pews. Hale didn't resist, only looked up at the cross above the altar. He taught me to cleanse sinners, he whispered. I only obeyed. Outside, Texas' sun blazed. As they led him from the church, the silent crowd parted. Some parishioners stepped forward, asking, what's happening, Pastor Hale? He turned, eyes still calm, lips moving in a prayer, or perhaps a final justification no one could hear. The patrol cars started. Through the rearview mirror, Mills saw the small church recede, its white walls glaring in the sun, a mute witness to 50 years of lies. He opened his notebook, writing briefly, July 12, 2022. Hale arrested at St. John Baptist Temple, Texas, no resistance. Initial statement, I only followed God's will. As the convoy turned onto the highway to Waco, Mills looked out the window. The sky's harsh light reflected off the glass, making him squint. For a moment, he thought of the brown-haired girl forgotten under Bosque's red mud for nearly half a century. Now at least, the silence was broken, and the man who killed in God's name would bow to human justice. Raymond Hale was escorted to Bell County's central interrogation room at 10 a.m. The bare concrete room held only a metal table and 2 chairs. The camera's red light blinked. For the first 12 hours, he said nothing. Sitting upright, hands clasped, he stared at the one-way mirror. No expression, no fear, no fatigue from a man stripped of his pastor title. Just silence. Mills sat across, flipping through the file, varying his tone, his questions, getting no response. Hale didn't ask for water, didn't eat, only occasionally moved his lips, as if praying. When an agent brought in the AC embroidered handkerchief photo, Hale glanced at it, a strange flicker in his eyes, not panic, but recognition. Then he lowered his head, murmuring, "You know not what you do." At midnight, Mills turned off the main light, leaving only a white beam from the ceiling corner on the table. He looked at Hale, voice hoarse. "You say you followed God's will. I don't believe God wanted a 19-year-old girl to vanish like that. If you truly believe, tell me, where is she?" Hale looked up for the first time in 12 hours. His eyes gleamed, reflecting some ancient fire. He smiled, a smile that chilled Mills. Then, slowly, he said, "Where the river splits in two." Mills froze, heart pounding. "What did you say?" "Where the river splits in two," Hale repeated, voice raspy like wind over rotting wood. "Where God washes sins clean, the water takes everything." That girl was cleansed too. After that, he fell silent again, eyes on his hands. Mills pressed, asking for meaning, a specific location, but Hale gave nothing more. Only once, when Mills said Bosque, Hale looked up and nodded faintly. Then he resumed praying. The vague statement was logged. That night, Mills returned to his office, spreading a Bosque River topographic map on his desk. The river split into two main branches west of Waco, Bosque West Fork and East Fork, meeting at a narrow floodplain, less than 10 miles from where the Chevrolet Nova was found. Along that confluence were dozens of flood zones and old mudflats, where the river had shifted over decades. He circled the intersection, scrawling, where the river splits in two. The next morning, he assembled the state's forensic and dive teams. In the meeting room, Mills outlined the search plan. We'll sonar scan along the Bosque's west branch, starting at the confluence near Old Crawford Road. The Caldwell case happened in August 1974, low water season, so the body might be buried under 4-6 feet of mud. If Hale's telling the truth, she's still there. A geologist nodded. That area's never been excavated, and it's a sediment trap. There's a chance for preserved tissue or bone. The team split into 3 groups: forensics, divers, and ground survey. Drones mapped the terrain, and ground-penetrating radar was mounted on a pickup. Everything moved urgently but quietly, as if the team sensed the weight of what lay ahead. That afternoon, Mills returned to the holding cell, watching Hale through the glass. He sat in the same posture, now holding a Bible his legal team had requested. He say anything else? Mills asked the guard. No, just read one passage and went quiet. The guard flipped his log, reading softly. The waters parted in two, and there God led his people through. The quote stopped Mills cold. He returned to the office, pulling Hale's old church log. On the August 1974 page, shaky handwriting, I saw the waters part. In that morning's light, he took her soul. Mills exhaled softly, voice low. The waters part, that morning's light. He pointed at the map, the confluence facing sunrise. That's Bosque West Fork. He sent orders to prep excavation equipment. Pinpointing coordinates 31, 614 degree N, 97. 356 degree W, where the Bosque split into 2 branches. Under the map he wrote the day's final report line. If his words are true, we're about to find where the river splits in 2, where the girl vanished, and perhaps where time stopped. That night, as the office emptied, Mills stayed. Outside, rain tapped the windows, dripping like water on the old tin roof in 1974. He looked at the Polaroid, Hale, the Nova, the Bosque bank behind, and whispered, this time we'll hear the river speak for her. On July 18, 2022, as fog clung thickly to the Bosque River's banks, a convoy of police vehicles left Bell County headquarters. Blue lights flickered on the gray water, casting cold streaks. In the back of the prisoner transport, Raymond Hale sat silent, hands cuffed, his aged face blending into his white inmate uniform. He stared out the window, eyes empty. No one in the car spoke. Aaron Mills in the front seat gazed toward the dirt road leading to the riverbank, where GPS marked the confluence of the Bosque's 2 branches, where the river splits in 2. They arrived at 7:20 a.m. Dawn was breaking, the sun peeking through willows. The area was cordoned off, yellow tape forming a circle, forensic specialists setting up tents for excavation. The silence was so deep, Mills heard insects in the reeds. He signaled to open the car door. 2 officers helped Hale out. He walked slowly, limping, his prison shoes sinking into wet mud. As river wind hit, he lifted his face, inhaling as if recognizing an old place's scent. Do you know where you are? Mills asked, voice steady. Hale smiled, gaze distant. I know, this is where the river splits in 2. That spot, he paused, pointing to a low mound by the river, where weeds grew knee-high. Right there. The forensic team froze, following his gesture. Mills signaled to hold position, then ordered the ground radar to start. The device sent steady waves, its screen showing layered mud. Within minutes, a technician spoke, anomaly at about 3 feet down, small bone structure, curved, likely human. No one spoke, only the hum of machines and water lapping the bank. Mills bowed his head, ordering softly. Dig slowly. Preserve every layer. 3 forensic techs knelt, using small trowels to peel back earth. The Bosque mud smell was thick, salty, metallic like rust. White bone fragments emerged from black soil. Then a woman's shoe, cracked leather but intact. A lace-up from the early 70s, bright stitch brand, where Anna worked. Next, a round metal glint in the dirt, a brass dress button, still threaded with white. Mills stepped back, throat tight. He heard the technician's hoarse voice. Confirmed female human remains, age approximately 18 to 20. Silence stretched, only wind rustling over the water. Hale stood meters away, staring at the pit. As the tech lifted the first bone, he closed his eyes, whispering, "She's at peace now." His voice was so soft, only Mills heard. He turned, anger mixing with disgust. "What did you say?" "She's at peace," Hale repeated, opening empty eyes. "God took her. I only did my part." Mills stepped closer, voice choked. "Your part was taking a girl's life. Your part was burying her here and preaching forgiveness for 48 years. Hale didn't answer, gazing at the river. Wind tousled his hair. "You don't understand," he said softly. "That day she was scared, said she didn't believe. I only wanted to save her soul from sin. I prayed for her purity, and you killed her." Mills cut in. "No," Hale said, voice vague. "I just sent her on. The water took her before I could look back. I returned to be sure she was at peace." Mills stared, eyes like blades. He signaled an officer to remove Hale from the scene. Hale didn't resist, glancing back at the mound one last time, whispering, "There, between the two waters, she hurts no more." All afternoon the forensic team dug. Each bone, each small item was sealed and numbered carefully. Mud and rain smells mixed, heavy as buried memory. As the sun sank, a red sunset lit the bosque, staining the river brick dark. Mills stood silently by the bank, watching evidence bags loaded onto trucks. On the mound, Anna's shoe lay alone, leather darkened, laces broken. He knelt, picking up a stray blade of grass beside it, placing it back on the shoe, a belated farewell. The forensic lead approached, voice low. Confirmed female, remains dated 45 to 50 years, age matches Anna Caldwell. Skull fracture at the back, direct, blunt force. Mills nodded silently, staring at the quiet river where the Bosque's branches met, seamless. Where the river splits in two, he thought. He buried her like a broken prayer. As the last truck left, only wind and encroaching dark remained. Mills stood alone, flashlight beam dancing on the water. He whispered, as if to the girl beneath, "Anna, we found you. After 48 years, the river's given back your voice." A week after the Bosque excavation, the bones and evidence were sent to the Texas State Forensic Lab in Austin for comprehensive analysis. The lab, deep in the DPS complex, smelled of disinfectant and cold plastic. Aaron Mills arrived early, standing silently behind thick glass, watching technicians in white hazmat suits lay out sealed bags on a steel table. Inside were bone fragments, a torn women's shoe, and brown hair caked in red mud. The last pieces of Anna Caldwell. Lead forensic pathologist Dr. Amelia Vaughn, who'd handled hundreds of cold cases, approached Mills with the first results. Her voice was steady but heavy. "We completed DNA sequencing on the left femur and molar. Results show a 99.999% match with Ruth Caldwell's genetic profile, the reference sample from the victim's mother." Mills closed his eyes briefly. For months, he'd only known Anna through faded Polaroids. Now the cold numbers in the report finally called her by name. "It's really Anna Caldwell," Vaughn said, her voice softer, almost a condolence. They continued opening evidence bags. A technician retrieved a tarnished metal fragment found near the wrist bones, a thin, broken silver watch band. Vaughn pointed to it. "We analyzed and cross-referenced it. It's a Lady Elgin, 1973 model. matching the watch the Caldwell family said she wore when she disappeared. The band was rusted, but a faint logo remained, along with 2 strands of hair tangled in the clasp, one brown, one silver-white. We compared the hairs, Vaughn continued, flipping to the second result sheet. The brown matches Anna's DNA. The silver, it's Raymond Hale's. Y chromosome DNA fully matches the samples from the handkerchief and basement film. The room's air grew heavy. Mills said nothing, his knuckles whitening as he clenched his fists. 2 hairs, entwined on the victim's watch band, a silent symbol of killer and victim, bound together in her final moment. When reconstruction was complete, the forensic team issued their morphological findings: Mitter, female, age 18, 20, injury, skull fracture at the back, consistent with blunt force from a rounded object, likely a gun butt or wooden club. Lungs and chest cavity, river mud present, indicating the victim was still breathing when buried. Time of death, within 1-2 hours post-injury, with signs of mechanical asphyxiation. Conclusion, victim was knocked unconscious, buried alive, and died from suffocation and burial. Mills read each line, pausing at buried alive. His throat tightened, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. All those years of silence, the no foul play reports, now erased by an undeniable conclusion: Anna Caldwell didn't vanish. She was murdered. Dr. Vaughn looked at him, her eyes weary. That man knew she wasn't dead. He buried her unconscious. Scratch marks on the inner soil layer show she woke, tried to claw her way out, then stopped breathing. She lowered her voice. She was buried shallow, only 3 feet. If someone had searched in the first 2 days, they might have found her. A long silence filled the room. Mills leaned on the table, staring at the silver watch fragment. 3 feet, he repeated, voice hoarse. Just 3 feet, and they let it go. The final report, printed that afternoon, read, Case status update. Homicide confirmed. Under cause of death, bolded, blunt force trauma, and asphyxia due to burial. The case was officially reclassified from missing person to homicide investigation. Mills held the paper, feeling like he was touching the end of a too long story. He thought of Ford, of Greer, of all who'd crossed this case without seeing it closed. And above all, he thought of Ruth Caldwell, the aging mother, who in an interview said she still brewed 2 cups of coffee each morning, one for herself and one for the daughter who might come back. That evening, leaving Austin, Mills stopped by the riverbank. A light rain fell, the wind carrying the scent of earth and damp moss. He opened his notebook, writing, DNA matches 99.999%. Hale can no longer hide behind a pastor's robe. The girl from 1974 has been named, not missing, but a murder victim. It took us 48 years to admit the obvious. He closed the notebook, gazing at the quiet river where the Bosque's branches merged. That water had once swallowed evidence, voices, an entire generation's memory. Now, it reflected the flashing lights of patrol cars, Justice's light, late but unextinguished. November 2022. Waco County Courthouse, Texas. The morning of the trial, fog still cloaked the old stone steps. Inside, the hallway echoed with footsteps, gavel taps, and the smell of hot coffee mingling with old paper. A familiar scent of cases, long waiting to be named. The gallery was packed. Reporters, law students, Waco locals, many didn't recall the 1974 disappearance, but all wanted to see the killer pastor face justice. In the defendant's seat, Raymond Hale sat upright, hands cuffed, orange jumpsuit draped over his frail frame. He scanned the room, his gaze chillingly calm. As the trial began, he gave a faint smile, as if attending a Sunday service. Texas prosecutor Elizabeth Carr stood, voice firm. Ladies and gentlemen, 48 years ago, a 19-year-old named Anna Caldwell vanished on her way home. She didn't run away. She was killed. Today, we have DNA, witnesses, evidence, and the defendant's own indirect confession to putting her in the ground. Behind her, a screen lit up, the brown and silver hairs entwined on the watch band, enlarged, then shifting to the old Polaroid, Hale beside the yellow Chevrolet Nova, facing the camera. silver watch on his wrist. Gasps rose. Some in the gallery looked away. Carr continued, "The police in 1974 failed, but science doesn't forget." Hale's DNA was found on the handkerchief, the watch band, and now from the victim herself. He says he followed God's will, but in American law, that's murder. First degree. She signaled a technician to play the 8mm film from Hale's basement. The screen flickered, audio crackling. A flashlight beam swept the mound, then a man's voice, faint. "God, please forgive me." Carr faced the jury. That's Raymond Hale's voice, filmed before police reached the scene. He was there not to pray, but to ensure a young girl stopped breathing. Defense attorney James Larrabee stood, voice calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client is a 74-year-old who served this community for 4 decades. We're talking about evidence over half a century old, DNA that could be contaminated, memories of the dead. This case was once no foul play, and remember, there was no body." He paused, scanning the room, giving a wry smile. "Well, now there is. But a body doesn't mean guilt." He turned to Hale. "My client cooperated, led police to the bones. If he's guilty, why would he help?" Carr shot back, not looking at him, because he wanted to direct the ending. Like all power-obsessed men, he wanted to control even the moment of his capture. The trial spanned 10 days. Forensic experts, DNA technicians, and former Deputy Greer testified. When Greer took the stand, his voice trembled. "I suspected him in 1974, but was told don't touch the church's man. The cost of that silence was 48 years. On day 8, the prosecution played the Bosque excavation video. Hale, cuffed, pointing to the mound. Right there. Then the sound of digging, gasps as bones emerged, and his soft voice, "She's at peace now." The courtroom fell silent. A woman in the gallery sobbed. Carr said nothing more, just looked at the jury. That moment needed no words. On day 10, Hale took the stand. He stood, hands trembling slightly, voice clear. "I didn't kill anyone, I saved her from sin. She begged for forgiveness, and I brought her to God. You don't understand the sacred." Carr stepped closer. "You call knocking out and burying a 19-year-old alive sacred?" Hale pursed his lips, closing his eyes briefly. "God spoke to me that night," Carr replied coldly. "And today, justice will speak back to you." As the court recessed for jury deliberation, the room stayed quiet. Outside, a light rain fell, pattering on the tin roof like a steady count. Mills sat behind the prosecution's row, watching light reflect off the tile floor. He'd seen dozens of cases, but never felt time so heavy. 3 hours later, a bell signaled. The jury returned. The foreperson, a gray-haired woman, stood to read the verdict. Her voice steady, unwavering. On the charge of first-degree murder, the defendant Raymond Hale, guilty. No cheers, no protests, just absolute silence. Hale closed his eyes, exhaling, lips moving in a silent prayer, or perhaps a final justification. The judge's gavel fell, voice stern. Life imprisonment without parole, court adjourned. As the judge's gavel struck its final blow, the cold sound echoed through the courtroom, bouncing off the old stone walls before fading into silence. The sentence was read again for clarity, each word like a nail. Raymond Hale, life without parole, to be served at Huntsville Correctional Facility, Texas. No one clapped, no one cheered. Only the rain's patter outside, like time closing a 48-year loop. Hale stood, hands cuffed, orange jumpsuit frayed at the collar. He lifted his head, scanning the gallery where a few old parishioners sat silently, eyes wet. As bailiffs approached, he paused, looking at Prosecutor Carr, then Mills, his gaze oddly paternal, not defiant, not remorseful. "I gave her back to you," he said, voice eerily calm. "You wanted justice? I gave justice. I was just one step ahead, the rest was God's work." Carr didn't respond. Mills met his eyes, gaze cold but heavy with exhaustion. He nodded slightly to the escorting officers. 2 guards flanked Hale, leading him from the courtroom. He didn't look back. Only as he crossed the threshold did he murmur a prayer, or so it seemed. No one could decipher. As the iron door closed, Mills sank into the last seat of the prosecution's row. He opened his notebook to the case's first page, where missing person, Anna Caldwell, 1974, had yellowed. He took his pen, writing slowly, each word heavy as a farewell. Case hash, 74 Caldwell. Closed after 48 years. Beside it, he added a small line. Homicide confirmed. Suspect convicted. Victim identified. His pen trembled. He paused, staring at Anna Caldwell. For a moment, all courtroom sounds vanished. Voices, rain, footsteps in the hall. Only the image remained, of a brown-haired girl leaving Brightstitch that year, her yellow Chevrolet Nova gleaming in the sunset, then dissolving into Texas's 1974 night. Carr approached, resting a hand on his shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. Mills nodded faintly, eyes down. "No, it's just closing the file. What was lost, no one can bring back." Outside, Waco's sky shimmered faintly after the rain. Leaves by the courthouse glistened, wet under the afternoon light. As Mills left, he paused on the steps, looking toward the Bosque, the old river still flowing, still splitting as Hale had said. One case, one life, one river, all closed in the same afternoon, where justice arrived late, but arrived. And amid the wind's murmur through the willows, there seemed a faint, distant voice of that girl. "I'm home now, Mom." Anna Caldwell's story isn't just a case closed after 48 years, it's a mirror of today's American society, where justice persists, but can be delayed by bias, prejudice, and blind faith. In 1974, Sheriff Ford wrote, "No foul play suspected," a line that halted the system. Back then, trust in religious authority, the image of respected Pastor Raymond Hale, made people turn away from the obvious. Respect, unchecked, became a shield for evil. Only in 2022, through persistence and DNA technology, did the truth rise from the Bosque's mud, where an innocent girl was once buried alive. The greatest lesson is that justice doesn't come on its own. It demands human persistence, even across half a century. In modern America, where faith in institutions and religion remain strong, we must learn to question rather than accept. When Mills opened that dusty case box, he didn't just seek justice for Anna, he fixed a systemic flaw, one every society has, whether in 1974 or 2024. The story also reminds us of science and memory's value. DNA, image scanning, and forensic tech aren't just tools, they're proof of humanity's duty to the past. In today's America, as cold case review projects grow, each solved case is our way of saying, no one is truly forgotten, and truth, however late, always finds its way to light. If you believe justice can be delayed, but never lost, hit subscribe to join us in reopening cases time forgot. Thank you for following Anna Caldwell's story. See you in the next video, where another truth will rise from the dark.